So we are back doing the lecture. This is Dr. Coach K working on the Game Changers Championship curriculum. This is a mini series of the Academy, the University of the Avatar Nation System Universe. This is the opportunity to showcase and demonstrate the global initiative, the global cause that we have done through working out page by page, chapter by chapter, person by person, business by business, crumbs under the table type of progress in the world to break the chains, break the cycles of generational chattel slavery to the African diaspora population scattered around the world, centered in the United States. We are building the Avatar Nation based on the 400 years of systematic institutional racism done to a population that was targeted to be chattel slaves, not only in the 1800s, but also into the 21st century through the mass incarceration industry or prison complex, along with the police brutality of direct shooting to kill, as well as other cruelties done to Black Americans or African diaspora populations, all descendants of the African slave that were disconnected from their homelands, whether in the Americas or in the Africa. They're as one and the same, as we have talked in previous lectures, that the Americas and the Africa was the Pangaea. And we will discuss the Pan-African movement through these 4 textbooks: The Strength to Love by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison by Raymond and Layton, The Prosperous Soul, Your Journey to a Richer Life by Cindy Trim, and Coaching, Evoking Excellence in Others by James Flattery. So today's lecture is going to be teaching. I'm going to be teaching out of The Prosperous Soul by Cindy Trim. As you know, all of these textbooks are by doctorates, scientists, or social or religious scientists. So we were going to, in continuation of the series, we finished Strength to Love, and now we're working simultaneously out of 3 books so that we can maximize the theme that we have chosen, and that is the school to prison pipeline. That is the ideology of tough on crime and these questions of the avatar soul, and why would a creator create a soul, test it in harsh conditions, under great extreme pressure to the death, to rise it up or raise it up in its children, a remarkable, pristine, what we call everlasting covenant, or the everlasting government, and how that government will manifest in the last days to rule and reign in earth as an avatar. We understand the avatar is a ideology of the Hindu, but we know that Hindu, along with the African principles of the Yeshua that has been created from the beginning of time, an African concept or a Pangaea concept of the resurrection and the eternal life of a Godhead, At the time, they had called it pharaohs, and in the 21st century, they're talking about revisiting ancestors' ideology, because they have been the mystical ways of life, incorporating the incarnate God had in us all, and how we have been destined or have a fate love to be transformed or changed into these avatars. And we have now conceptualized and agreed to identify the construction of identity of a group of people who has taken the journey of the avatar of 400 years through chattel slavery from the 1600s to the 21st century, through extreme pressure from cruelties and unusual punishments. We have now classified this as a construction of race, the blacks scattered around the world, starting in the center of the world, the headquarters world of the United States, which is considered the African diaspora, the Black American man, and then the Black American family and the Black American woman, and how this is unfolding of the war for the avatar and the war against the avatar through extinction versus to the rising of its reign, of its everlasting reign here in earth as well as beyond. So let's begin. Today we're going to delve into the Prosperous Soul. We're on page 20. So here we go. We mirror what we identify with. We reflect what we see and focus upon what dominates our attention, determines the direction of our life. It's true. The Bible tells us so. Jacob used this principle to breed the kind of sheep he wanted. It is true with animals that are not rational, creative beings. Can you imagine how true it is with humans? We are told in 1 John that we will become like Christ when we see him. The Apostle Paul wrote that as we behold the glory of the Lord, we are transformed into that same image. What you behold, you will become, and what you meditate upon, you will give birth to. You could say that what grows in your mind will grow in your life. This is why the life of the soul is so vitally important. It's why I wrote this series of soul books. It's why I wrote this book, so you could be transformed into that same image, that Christ in you, the hope of glory. We will be talking about how to create the necessary conditions for transformational growth, how to expand your capacity to be and do more, how to live a more prosperous life. This is the third book in my soul series. The first book, the 40 Days Soul Fast, shows you how to detoxify and declutter your inner world. It takes you on a 40-day soul cleansing journey to help you reboot from within. It introduces the 40 characteristics of an authentic person that enable you to live with greater clarity, integrity, and freedom. The second book, Reclaim Your Soul, focuses on how to take back your personal power in order to break free from the self-sabotaging behaviors and toxic relationships. It discusses how to replace ineffective coping mechanisms with strategies that will protect you from common entanglements that ensnare your soul. Here we explore the emotional attachments and various types of soul ties that keep many bound, and as well as the 40 disciplines that will build the resiliency you need to get free and stay free. Now, We're going to keep going. Now, in this third book, we will talk less about what to move away from and more about what to move toward. Whether before we learned about the impoverished soul, here we are focusing on the prosperous soul. We are doing less weeding and more planting. We are talking more about what to do rather than what not to do. The goal of our instruction is to help you live and love from a pure and prosperous heart. What does abundance actually look like? What is true prosperity? What is real wealth? How do we forget the past and yet learn from it? How can we rewire our minds to create a more prosperous life? It starts with making a choice, a single decision. You are always only one decision away from living the abundant life Christ promised you in John 10:10. You must decide to hope. You must decide to be joyful, to be grateful, to be expectant, to look for and see a more prosperous future. Can you envision it? Does it have the potential to hold your gaze? If not, what would? Dig deeper, move past the what of desire to the more powerful why of drive. What drives you? Most people have no idea. They don't even know what it is they really want. I challenge you to search how many times in the New Testament Jesus, as we claim Yahshua, asked those seeking his help, what do you want? Today, as you read this, ponder what it is you really want. What's driving you? Ultimately, this is significantly more important than any consideration of what could be holding you back. As you will learn in the following pages, to prosper is to hope. The Lord told Jeremiah his plans were to prosper him, to give him hope. It is the power of positive expectation, of a sense of possibility. The author of Hebrews wrote that hope is the anchor of our souls, and it is what makes room for the joy that strengthens us. Create an image of what you want to see, and then act as if what is that upward call you are pressing toward. That's holding your gaze. How do you endeavor to be? Now act as if it were so. As the ancient philosopher Socrates so famously said, endeavor to be what you desire to appear, and never lose hope, because you are always just one decision away from living the life of your dreams. If you lose hope, somehow you lose the vitality that keeps life moving. You lose that courage to be, that quality that helps you go on in spite of it all. And so today, I still have a dream. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So we're going to move on to what is prosperous. The adjective auspicious, favorable, marked by success or economic well-being, enjoying vigorous and healthy growth, flourishing, prospering. It means to cause to succeed, from prosperous, favorable, intransitives, 14th century. To succeed in an enterprise or activity, especially to achieve economic success, to become strong and flourishing, to cause to succeed, to thrive. That's what prosperity is defined. So let's go to the next chapter. We must never stop dreaming. Dreams provide nourishment for the soul, just as a meal does for the body. Paulo Coelho, The Pilgrimage. Joseph had a dream, and that's when the trouble started. Or was it? Have you ever considered that Joseph's life was really like before he began his epic journey towards greatness and the world power? What did he struggle with before he left to find his brothers that fateful day? Or even before his father gave him that famous coat? Was there ever a time that he wasn't despised by everyone but his father? His mother died giving him birth to his brother. His half brothers had no use for him. In fact, they had come to hate him. Then he had a dream that he would be a great leader, so great, in fact, that even his father, his mother, and brothers would bow down to him. What do you do with a dream like that when you're nearly the youngest and the most reviled among your siblings? Dreams like that, especially when they have a prophetic significance, can consume you, make you impatient to prove yourself to those who underestimate your potential. Perhaps Joseph's problem was that he got too excited about the dream and not excited enough about the person he had to become to realize it. His immaturity in publicizing such a vision caused his brothers to think of him as delusional and arrogant. It drove them to despise and hate him all the more, and that seems to be when the real trouble started. His brothers conspired against him and almost killed him. Can you imagine? At the last minute, one of them convinced the others to sell him as a slave to traveling nomads to avoid getting blood on their hands. He traveled in bonds to Egypt and was sold into an Egyptian family household as a common laborer. If that wasn't bad enough to add insult to injury, just as he was beginning to garner some respect, he was falsely accused of attempting rape and thrown into prison. For 13 years of his life, Joseph lived as a slave and a convict, a dreamer, and eventually an interpreter of dreams. Joseph had a greatness about him that invited violent opposition, as described by Albert Einstein. He said, great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. The mediocre mind is incapable of understanding the man who refuses to bow blindly to conventional prejudices and chooses instead to express his opinions courageously and honestly. We all know the story of Joseph's overnight success when he went from prisoner to prime minister within a matter of hours. We love to talk about people who seem to succeed out of the nowhere, but very seldom do we talk about the many nights they went to sleep with their dreams deferred, or the many years of character building that came before. We might think of these years as being years of suffering. We might look on them as an unfortunate series of misunderstandings and injustices. We might think of them as lost years, years of adversity, hardship, oppression, and poverty, wasted years. They may have been all of those things. But in looking at Joseph's life again recently, I came to a more powerful realization. These were the years of Joseph's prosperity. Now, we're going to continue on because this is a very important part of the story. Now you may say, I beg to differ. Joseph didn't prosper until after those years. He didn't begin to prosper until he was put in charge of the nation. That was when he got the big house, lavish lifestyle, and fine family, large and in charge, living the life of his dreams. Those were Joseph's years of prosperity, not when he was a slave and a convict. Yes, outwardly it may look like that, but we need to take a closer look at what prosperity really is. Prosperity has little to do with temporal success and more to do with the spiritual resilience and the fortitude of the soul. Prosperity is the divine enablement that helps you overcome obstacles in order to fulfill a purpose, the capacity you need to maximize your potential to create change. If you look at the definitions of prosperous, you will see the first word in its definition is auspicious. Auspicious has an interesting meaning. It is rooted in the word auspice, which indicates a prophetic sign. Thus, to be auspicious means that things are going according to favorable auspices or prophetic signs or words. The Latin for prosper, is translated according to the expectation or according to hope, and literally means for hope. The word prosperous also means enjoying vigorous and healthy growth or flourishing. According to Webster Dictionary, prosper means to become strong, as well as to cause to succeed or thrive. These are the roots of inner components of prosperity. Yes, to be prosperous also means economic well-being, and to prosper also means to achieve economic success. But I would submit to you that those are really outer manifestations of an inner condition, an internal state of wellness, growth, and expectancy of what I believe is true prosperity. I've seen time and again that to be prosperous on the outside means nothing if you are not prosperous on the inside, and that being prosperous on the inside. Now, there's a quote: prosperity is divine enablement that helps you overcome obstacles in order to fulfill a purpose, the capacity you need to maximize your potential to create change. Now, almost always leads to prosperity being evident from without. If you are prosperous on the outside only and lose your financial wealth, you are finished. If you are prosperous on the inside, however, and lose your financial wealth, you generally find a way to start over and rebuild it. Prosperity is a spiritual state that not only gives you psychological, emotional fortitude, even in the midst of the most adverse circumstances, but also the hope, faith, and love that never fails. For those who acknowledge prosperity merely by outward and financial measures, prosperity could be reduced to owning a big house, driving the latest new car, and living an opulent lifestyle. So many people enjoy the kind of life, but live with holes in their souls. In prosperity, were it simply a matter of getting, anyone could borrow large sums of money or con their way into financial wealth through crooked investment schemes. Ambitious people could work long hours while ignoring their marriage and health, climb the corporate ladder by stepping on others, or any number of other ways. People trade their souls to achieve prosperity, little by little, day by day, doing whatever it takes to look prosperous. I call this the Ebenezer Scrooge syndrome. Living empty while facing death, sitting on a pile of ever-diminishing wealth. Anyone who follows the news has seen where insider trading or Ponzi schemes led to a quick fortune, even if it did eventually land eventually land the perpetrators in prison. But before they were caught, were they prospering? Consider the rich landowner who decided to build bigger barns in order to eat, drink, and be merry, without realizing he would die that very night. Such wealth creates a life that may feel good for a time, but always ends the same. full of regret, broken relationships, or spending your hard-won accumulation of capital to regain the health you had taken for granted. This is the part where we stop and talk about the component that links this prosperous soul, the journey of a richer life, to the journey of the avatar, the nation that we're calling the transatlantic slave trade nation, the slaves, the African slaves that were trafficked, that were put in chains, that were chattel property, chattel enslavement. These are the properties that we did not have a revelation of why. What was the reason for this journey of 400 years that we are calling the Great Tribulation, that will never, ever, ever happen again in all time and all timelines? This nation is a one of a kind. 400 years of people that was enslaved. It was the only system ever written in history to be done for the exact prophecy of 400 years. This is where it begins and ends, of the one nation ever being created for people unto God, the people that will be an everlasting government. When we look at a government in this generation of the 21st century, we see a defective government globally. We see broken relationships. We see undervalued workers. We see greedy hoarders storing up wealth for themselves, letting the wealth rot and decay and age under the weatherized world. We see children being tortured and put to death. We see adults in chains, in imprisonment, in cells. We see a world that is dying daily without a cure for their souls. And this is the reason why we have this conversation today, is because 400 years we have a glimpse of the cruelties and unusual punishments done to a population consistently, generation after generation, to the children, to the children, to the children, descendants of the African slave in 1619 to the 20 to 20 of the last year documented to seal a fate for the everlasting government. The population that will serve as elections, elected living beings of the universe to be the avatar nation, to be the avatar world universe, the galactic, right, government that can rule with justice, mercy, compassion, but strength and solidarity, of unity, unification, and respect the power and trueness of the living God, or the living creator that created a magnificent, fearfully made nation. Yes, this is the reason we have this link of the Prosperous Soul by Cindy Trim, to see the identification, the construction of identity of this 400 years as the Joseph man. This nation of 400 years of population, fellowship, like Christ the Messiah, go through a fire of brimstone, of refinement and pressure of no return. Like Joseph, to be able to embody a dream, a hope of a very infinite and eternal truth of being chosen by the Almighty. What arrogance, right? What wretchedness to say you are the everlasting government, that you are chosen to be a people unto God. Not once have we identified the journey, but only the outcome. Think about it. The journey, enslavement, cruelties, unusual punishments, imprisonment, confinement, right? And then the glory of the day of receiving the beautiful wealth, the beautiful, majestic honor of crowning beside the throne. This is the Prime Minister of 400 years. This people unto God. How can we not see with our very eyes our next generation of forever, the everlasting government, the African slave that endured the chattel enslavement, chattel slavery? Think about it. 400 years of generation to generation breeding babies to be slaves, to be raped, to live in hard conditions of work ethics around the clock until they died, to be lynched, to be murdered in the streets with bullets, to be aborted, to be convicted as innocent. All fit the mold of the Avatar and the Avatar journey. This is what we're calling the prosperous soul. And we will continue to delve into the investigation of this avatar and the Avatar nation and the forecast of its future over Earth and all the universe. Selah.